Don't get too comfortable at this yacht. Folks like you don't fit in here. The words sliced through the jazz like a razor. The buzz dropped dead. Heads swiveled. The vibe flipped. And then came the cackle, shrill and biting, designed to burn. Lydia, wrapped in a gown the shade of flames, bent over her lounge chair with a grin that was pure poison. A champagne flute sparkled in her grip. Without a beat, she tilted it. A rush of bubbly poured down like a torrent, snagging the sunset glow off the deck lights before seeping into the curls of the woman parked below. It streamed over her scalp, trickling by her temples, carving along her chin, smearing her coral blouse with deep blotches. The splash of fizz on cloth rang out sharper than it ought to. Sharper 'cause the whole deck had zipped its lip. Gasps popped up sporadic. A couple stifled snickers fought to surface. Phones popped out fast, lenses starving for dirt. A tech mogul's spouse clapped a hand over her mouth, stunned. A pack of slick bros in custom polos kicked back on their seats, smirking like they'd scored a show cash couldn't cop. Lydia flung her head back and cackled once more, victorious, soaking up the spotlight. There, that's an upgrade. Coral was never your vibe. Bubbly suits you way better. Her tone boomed like a foghorn. Cocky and slicing, she swung the drained flute for everyone to clock, tipping it like it had won her a prize. Some yachties chuckled on cue, others gave limp claps. Everybody got the drill. This was straight-up turf claim. But the woman in coral, the black CEO, didn't budge. She didn't twitch. She didn't swab the fizz leaking into her neckline. She just chilled there, letting it flow. Her palms stayed planted on the armrest, cool as ice, locked in quiet rebellion. Her stare climbed up. It wasn't a rushed peak, not some frantic beg. It was measured, intentional, plotted. Her lock hit Lydia with such low-key punch that the chuckles in the air started to sputter. One by one, yaps shut down. Giggles choked off halfway. The wave of racket crashed back to nada. Lydia twitched a hair, her sneer locking up, but she squeezed out another snicker, flipping her mane, hamming it for the gang. "Come on, don't play coy. Flash those pearly whites for the grams," she jabbed, nodding at the lit-up phones zeroed on the lounge. Still, even she sensed the tide flipping. The circus wasn't hers no more. The soaked lady didn't drop a syllable. Her freeze-out weighed more than hollering, more than flipping out. Every bead sliding from her jaw to the teak was a wordless mic drop. Every tick of quiet, stacked heat Lydia couldn't cackle off. The deck itself seemed to curve round her chill. The deck lights twinkled overhead, but the beam had jumped. The one trickling fizz wasn't the punchline anymore. She was morphing into something else, something rock solid, a pull that every eyeball now orbited. Before we roll on, where you tuned in from? Toss your town or state in the comments down low. And if you back poise and payback, smash like and sub. These tales lit fuses, and we're stoked you're riding. Now back to her. The quiet didn't stick. Mumbles started snaking through the crowd like fog. One lady bent to her guy, her sapphires snaring the rays as she hissed behind her palm. "You catch that? She just parked it." Another dude snorted soft, wagging his head. "She won't hack 5 ticks in this crew. Not pulling that, but not every mutter-packed shade." From the bow end of the lounge, a sailor scowled, peepers narrowing at Lydia in scarlet. A low grumble hit his buddy. Over the line? That was way over. His line barely topped the snap of a phone lens. The phones, man, they were all over. A half-dozen shots nabbed the fizz still leaking from the CEO's blouse. Each snap already queued for stories and feeds before the bash wrapped. Some held 'em high, mugs lit with the buzz of tea. Others faked stealth records, acting like they nursed spritzers while their cams scorched the shame into pixels. And then hit the cackles, spotty at first, then crashing like breakers. A knot of trust fund houds, heirs to stacks they didn't stack, slapped each other's backs. One of them, peepers gleaming with meanness, bent to his pal. She ought to say grace. That bubbly ran more than her whole get-up. Their howls were raw, rough, built to plug the void left by the CEO's no-show clapback. A dame in pearls sneered as she fixed her coaster. She don't rate here. Check her. Can't even throw hands. Lydia, catching these rumbles, hoisted her bare flute again, like she was waving the band of shade. She dipped a fake bow to the parked form in coral, wallowing in the splash of backup. "Bottoms up to gatecrashers," she belted. More howls, more slaps, more tinkles of flutes. Yet under the din, static brewed. Not everybody's rolling. A duo of VCs huddled behind their coasters, worry carved on their mugs. She's the backer, right? The handshake this afternoon. Another dipped his chin grim, peepers darting to the lady swimming in fizz. Their fun soured to sweat. They clocked the stakes, even if Lydia didn't. Meantime, the CEO stayed planted. She didn't mop the puddle at her collar. She didn't jump to scrap. Her quiet turned into its own gig, a glass where every mean yap had to hear its own bounce. The louder the posse jeered, the more her chill blew up their ugly. One young sailor dropped his phone. Hit with a sudden itch, he shoved it in his pocket and glared at his drink instead. A gal next to him knit her brow, her howl cutting short as she eyed the parked form, fizz-drenched but bulletproof. Something about the setup quit feeling funny. It felt loaded, like the deck was braced for the flip that had to drop. Lydia, clueless, puckered an air kiss to the phone posse. "Lock this bash in," she hollered, whirling showy in her scarlet getup. "This is what goes down when you crash where you ain't welcome." Her cackle exploded again, piercing and feral, stuffing every nook of the polished deck. But in the dead air under that cackle, in the lag between the wheezes and the slaps, stairs started sliding. The scales were tipping. Not everybody's chuckling now. Not everybody's missing what's brewing, and smack in the thick of it, fizz pattering steady to the teak planks, the black CEO hung tight. Her lock never blinked. Fizz trailed her temple, skimmed her cheekbone, and vanished into the pleats of her blouse. Still, she lounged bolt upright, palms easy on the armrest like zilch went down. Round her, the deck thrummed with jumpy vibes, howls too cranked, mumbles too edged, the clinks of flutes masking the jitters. But when her stare rose, the racket dialed back. She clocked first the flute in Lydia's mitt, now bone dry, clutched like a blade flipped to bling. Then she hiked her gaze taller, pinning the dame in scarlet. The sneer on Lydia's chops hitched. It was just a flash, a blip. But in that tick, the posse nabbed it. The CEO's glare was on purpose, no rush, drilling deep. She didn't got a yap. The quiet draped her like plate, and the heft of it shoved the deck. A wave of squirms spread. One sailor fidgeted in his seat, hit with how his own howl had boomed a sec back. Another dropped her phone, busted for filming. The cams still aimed, but their holders weren't so sure they wanted receipts of what they were clocking. Lydia flipped her mane, forcing a crumbly snicker. "What, no snapback? No lines?" she jabbed, but her tone nicked at the rims. She bent nearer, flapping her flute in fake win. "You ought to thank me. No glam squad could ever make you pop like this." Her meanness hit pure quiet. And then real slow the CEO winked. One even blink. Her lashes weighed with fizz before her peepers snapped open again. Cool, icy, no give. It was the vibe of someone who'd already called it, someone gripping the plug to kill this whole farce with a nod. Lydia felt it. She eased a half step, but it was plenty. Those scoping caught it, rumbles stirred. "You peep that? She's not even heated." Someone breathed. Another piped back, uneasy. Nah, she's posted up. Oh. The CEO tweaked her stance a touch, squaring in her lounge. She hiked one palm, not to swab the fizz, but to park it soft on the stem of her own flute, digits wrapping it with low-key lock. The play was tiny, but it yanked focus. Her lock stayed glued to Lydia. She let the quiet drag. A quiet fat enough to snuff the shady giggles trying to flare back up. The posse bent in on instinct, hooked by the drag of her park, and in that juiced lull, something flipped. The circus quit belonging to the dame in scarlet. The beam had slid. Every peeper locked on the soaked form at the lounge, not as chum, but as the chill eye of a squall nobody else clocked inbound. Lydia forced another cackle, too cranked, too empty. She flapped to the posse like to snag their eyes back, but her peepers darted antsy to the dame she'd tried to trash. And what stared back wasn't soft. It was heads up. The yacht deck hummed with static. Yachties bent nearer to each other, tones dropped, jitters cracking out like faults in ice. The fizz kept leaking. The quiet kept digging. And smack in the core, the black CEO's peepers spun a yarn nobody else dared spit. This ain't wrapped. Lydia shifted her stance, heels clacking soft on the teak as she chased the deck's beat. Her grin stretched wider, crumbly at the edges, the sort of beam that dared the posse to howl with her or cop standing solo. She spun the bare flute in her digits and let it swing loose at her hip. Whoops, she piped, tone oozing fake sweet. Guess I got loose, but hey, peeper, she actually slays more this way, right? She thumbed to the dame in coral, still parked, still zipped, still leaking fizz like a carving hacked from grit. A few tame snickers trailed. A scatter of slaps rose from her ride-or-die crew, scrambling to prop her ego. One dude even clapped too hard, his snort ricocheting round the deck like busted ice. But past that thin loop of backups, the air wobbled. Yachties swapped cagey peaks. A lady masked her squirm with a pull of spritzer. An old salt fiddled his lynx, glaring at the coaster over the show up front. Lydia cocked her dome back, wallowing in what she figured for props. She hiked her chin, her scarlet gown snaring the rays, studs at her lobes flashing with every overplayed wave. She was fine, sure, but her fine had soured to something jagged and puffed. She strutted round the lounge like a headliner mid-set, her heels tapping a beat of contempt. Spill it. She bent in tight to the CEO, her scent flooding the breeze, her vibe laced with acid. How's it hit to lounge with us, to rock your lil coral blouse and fake like you rate? Figured nobody'd clock? The deck held its wheeze. Every word was a jab, every beat and dig. She aimed to crack her mark, not just with fizz but with bars, to peel off poise strip by strip till zilch left but egg on face. And then she howled again, louder, harsher, whipping her dome to the posse. Don't hold back, y'all. Get a real eyeful. This is what drops when you climb too steep. Phones flashed. Flutes clinked. But the juice was slimmer now. Stretched tight, primed to pop. Even those still howling felt the itch under their own tones. The nag that the gag had crossed. The CEO stayed glued down. Her quiet was starting to vibe risky, like a front stacking at the edge. She didn't yap, but her vibe spat plenty. Her lock trailed Lydia with chill aim, mapping her every overblown play like pricing out each dig. Lydia tried to hold that lock but ended up glancing off. She whirled again, flipping her mane, looping her bare flute in spins. She dove into her bit. Sold that show could wipe the shake of second guess creeping her ribs. Flash for the grams, she jabbed, dropping her tone just shy for the close crew to catch. This'll be your one shot at ink. Her cackle spilled fresh, but it hit off now. Slimmer, grasping, scrapping against the thick quiet pushing back from the dame she'd tried to wreck. And cross the lounge, cross the deck. Folks started clocking it. The mean gig quit landing funny. It was coming loose. Lydia didn't peep it yet, but the tick she dumped that fizz, she'd lit a short. And the dame she shaded was the one packing the strike. The howls spread again, though slimmer this time, faked like spritzer gone stale. A fistful of yachties slapped the arms of their seats, itching to keep the party pumping, itching to back the cash. Their tones rose in thin backup. "Word," one slick bro barked from the stern, his lynx snaring the light as he hiked his flute. "Gatecrasher's gotta learn the lane." His line yanked a wave of itchy snickers. Nasser, another, hyped, kicked back in his seat and spat louder than smart. If she want to roll with titans, she best learn to eat a gag. His crew howled too hard, proving they rated the same loop of mean. Lydia drank it in. She wheeled to him, grinning, arms flung wide like she owned the deck's pulse. "See? They get it," she piped, tone thick with win. She wallowed in the shine, looping her flute like a wand. This is what hits when you blank where you started, but splits were cracking. Not everybody's rolling. At the next lounge, a gal hissed sharp to her man. "This is foul." He hacked a throat clear and peeped away, dodging her stare. At another spot, two VCs swapped peaks loaded with no-spit math. One breathed, "She's their backer, yeah?" The other gave the tiniest chin dip. Both zipped, glaring at their coasters. Nope to the clown show. Still the mean choir kept humming. Phones hovered taller, nabbing it all. One yachty angled his cam on purpose to box the CEO's soaked form, zooming the fizz trails, snaking her hide. He snorted to his lonesome, already scripting the tags he'd drop. "Smile," somebody barked from across the deck. "Hook us a money shot." A roar of howls chased, bouncing off polished rails, pinging under the strung lights. Lydia whirled once, her scarlet gown flaring big round her pins. She puckered an air kiss to the posse, buzzing in the fake slaps. "Don't blank this bash," she cried, hiking her flute high, though it was tapped. "It's the night a faker got clocked." She dipped with stagey overkill, reveling in the act. The tight crew of yachties slapped harder, their howls climbing again, scrambling to stuff her ego. But the juice was empty, held up by routine over real. And smack in the core, the black CEO still parked in quiet. Her park only amped the mean round her, bouncing every howl and jab back on the ones spitting it. One yachty clocked it. He dropped his phone slow, shoving it in his pocket, peepers flicking to the planks. A dame close cut her howl mid-pull, clapping a palm over her trap like busted for the noise. The scales were sliding, soft but real. Lydia, too buzzed on her own strut, missed it. She dipped again, mane spilling over her shoulders, her cackle high and raw. "This is her deal," she hollered, thumbing big to the soaked dame at the lounge, "and this is all she'll clock." The slaps hit back, but softer this tick, dotted, iffy. The juju was cracking. Still Lydia just grinned wider, blind to the quiet swelling in the gaps, tween the howls. She figured she was bodying. She didn't peep the planks under her were already splitting. The fizz leaked slower now, dark blots crawling across the coral cloth, but the black CEO didn't stir. She parked rooted like the lounge was her perch, and the whole deck had unwillingly clocked her as boss. Her quiet wasn't tap-out. It was math. In her skull, the play looped. The inks scrawled cross docs that very afternoon. The wire draft queued but not dropped. The figs that hit 9 zeros. 3.2. A link hailed as ironclad. And now, in 1 hour flat, Her so-called Lynx sis had flipped that tie into a clown fest of trash. Lydia cackled fresh, flipping her mane, gripping the ring of her own strut. "What's eating you?" she shaded, bending close enough for her scent to clash with the tart bite of fizz. "Cat snag your yap? Figured bosses always got bars." The CEO's peepers didn't twitch. She scoped her teaser with creepy chill, her lock slow and plotted. She wasn't clocking the fizz. She wasn't clocking the posse. She was clocking the strut itself, sizing it, scaling it, pricing its tab. "You figure this is juice?" her brain whispered in the quiet. A flute, a cackle, a posse primed to slap for mean. But true juice don't need eyes. True juice flips the figs that stacked this deck. The ink on the docks your kin grip. The blur of tones round her melted to a flat drone. Every dig, every howl, every low mutter fused to one backdrop hum. All she caught crisp was the ring of her own lock-in. She parked one palm flat on the armrest, steady, solid. The play was small, but it yanked eyes. A few close yachties peeped down, sensing a flip, but couldn't tag it. Her other palm moved same careful, snagging the folded linen coaster from her lap. She patted soft at her chin, wiping a fizz trail, no rush. Not weak sauce, control play. Lydia sneered. "Finally mopping up, huh?" Her bars were cranked, built to carry. But they tripped in the breeze, crumbly against the quiet tailing the CEO's chill moves. Inside, the call locked in. Every dig, every cackle, every fizz bead sliding her hide got tallied, crunched to math, and the total rang clear. 2 billion, ghosted with a nod. Her peepers hiked fresh, pinning Lydia's lock dead on. Not a glare, not even pushback, just lock-in. The sort of lock-in that rattled even the wildest. Cross the deck. A few yachties squirmed antsy. They couldn't tag it, but they felt it. The front in those peepers, the sure thing of payback. Lydia hitched again just a tick. She hiked her chin taller, chasing to bury the if with another cackle. But the split had dropped. And in the quiet, tween 'em, the black CEO chewed one thought. "Your kin figures they dumped fizz on me. They miss I'm about to dump billions out of their grip." The coaster slid back to the armrest, creased neat, like the blot on it was zilch. The black CEO's palms hit park again. Her lock swept the deck. No rush, no hunt for pity, just scoping. Each yachty felt the drag of her peepers when it slid over 'em. Some dodged their mugs. Others faked sips of spritzer. The breeze grew thick, brittle, every noise sharp against the quiet she owned. Lydia misread that hush for W. She strutted nearer, heels smacking teak with plotted beat. "There it drops," she piped cranked, wheeling to the posse like spitting a script line. The quiet of someone who knows she don't rate. A few slapped on beat. A nervy wave of snickers chased. But the CEO stayed unfazed. Her park quit being guard up. It was game. She snagged her phone, the screen glowing soft in her palm. Her digits danced no hurry sharp, tapping once, twice. She hiked it to her ear. The flip hit quick. The posse bent in, hooked. Lydia cocked her dome, sneering. "Oh, she's dialing back up? Maybe her skipper can tote a rag." Her bars were edged, but her tone was too zippy, too hungry to stuff the gap. The CEO's clip when it dropped was zilch like Lydia's show. Chill, frosty. Each beat hit like lead in the quiet. "Kill the link," she said. "Now." A hush crashed heavier than before. The deck seemed to shrink, the breeze shoving in. Even the jazz trio by the rail fumbled, their picks scraping strings wrong. Yaps froze mid-mumble. Peepers popped. Peaks darted. She cut the line no flare, parking the phone by her coaster like an after. Then she creased her palms fresh, stance solid, peepers front. Lydia blinked, her cackle snagged in her craw. "What did she spit?" she piped, forcing another snort, but it rang empty. Nobody piped back. The posse's lock had slid. They quit peeping the dame in scarlet. Their peepers stuck to the soaked form at the lounge, the one who dropped just 5 bars, yet flipped the whole deck. A dude at the stern yanked his own phone, scrolling wild. His mug drained white. He nudged his buddy, hissing urgent. Another Yachty's screen lit, flashing a ping from the wire. The mumbles cranked faster, sharper. She can't mean the handshake. This afternoon's, Lydia's grin wobbled. She tried flapping her bare flute again, bossing eyes. "She's capping," she scoffed, but her peepers flickered, spilling doubt. The CEO dropped zilch more. She didn't gotta. Her quiet rang louder than any drop. The drag of what she'd just pulled started settling across the deck like grit post blaze. Lydia cackled once more, too cranked, too yanked. But fewer jumped in this go. The act was coming loose, and she was the lone holdout blind to how total she'd lost the reins. At the core, soaked in fizz yet off limits, the black CEO parked in flawless chill, her quiet now a ruling. The tick dragged long, every peeper darting tween the dame in coral and Lydia in scarlet. The drone of mumbles swelled to a low grind, bars clashing, scattering, climbing again. Somewhere aft, a phone pinged with a wire. Another chased, then more. The first dude to peep his screen went ghost. "Holy crap," he breathed, digits shaking as he scrolled. "It's legit," she's bailing. His buddy bent over, peepers popping at the figs blasting across the display. Screens lit all over, pings spread like brush fire, the link, the stack, the billions sudden vapor. The tags weren't typed yet, but the money shakes were already rattling the deck. A dame gripped her man's arm. She didn't just... The bars trailed to shock. "She did," he breathed, tone scraped. 3.2 billion scrubbed clean. The trio had quit strumming full stop. Their picks hung iced over strings, waiting a green that never dropped. The smack of heels on teak was the lone beat left. And even that belonged to Lydia pacing, her grin splitting like ice. "She's capping," she swore, tone cranked now, grasping. "This is party smoke. Lil drama, that's it." Her cackle was high and raw, but zilch echoed it this round. Domes bent over lit screens instead. Yaps snapped like flares. "It's ghosted. Peep the wire. I just copped the same ping. You clock what this drops?" Lydia wheeled to the posse, arms flung. "Why y'all glued to phones? She can't pull this. My bro, our kin, we run this town." But her tone quit filling the deck. It got gulped by the real scrolling every gadget, by the drag of quiet stacking round the soaked form who'd spit just 5 bars and undid a dynasty's worth of strut. The black CEO snagged her flute, not the bare one swung like a shank, but her own, still half-loaded. She hiked it chill, unshook mitt, solid despite the fizz leaking her cuff. She pulled it to her lips, sipped once, then parked it back with soft poise. No drop, no rundown, just chill. The deck blew not with howls, not with slaps, but with a gale of mumbles that rang louder than any cheer. Seats scraped as Yachties bent to each other, wild piecing what had just unraveled. Some parked stiff, too rocked to budge. Others jotted notes, already eyeing the war rooms and tags waiting past these polished rails. Lydia's wheeze quicked. She wheeled back to the dame she'd tried to trash, scarlet gown sticking like even the threads knew the blaze was out. "You figure you can spook me with this kid stunt?" she demanded. But the shake in her tone spilled her. The CEO hiked her peepers fresh, chill as ever, pinning her teaser's lock with the same no-blink steel. She didn't clap back. She didn't gotta. The deck clapped for her, 'cause everybody now clocked this wasn't stage. This was juice. Lydia's cackle tried climbing again, crumbly and faked, but it snapped before stuffing the deck. The posse quit hers. The yachties had slid in their seats, their mugs lit with cold screen glow, their mumbles honed with rush. Nobody cared for her show no more. They cared for figs, for wires, for the quake rumbling under their stacks. One dude near the bow barked into his phone, tone quaking, "Dump, dump now!" His bars carried like a flare at dusk, sparking more lines, more wild mumbles. A dame in silk clutched her bag so tight her knuckles bleached. She pinned, crossed the lounge at the soaked form, and breathed near to herself. She straight-pulled it. Lydia wheeled on her heels. Her scarlet gown fanning big-like motion alone could yank the beam back. "Don't hear her!" she hollered, but her bars rang empty, gulped by the climbing gale of freak. "She can't. She ain't got the juice, my bro, our kin." But the posse wasn't tuning no more. They'd peeped enough. They'd heard enough. The quiet of the black CEO had rang louder than her rival's raw protests. The CEO, still parked, tweaked her stance with easy poise. She parked her palms flat against the linen, digits loose, peepers scanning the deck like scoping her own turf. The blots on her blouse gleamed in the rays, but they quit looking like trash marks. They looked like war ink, like a crown brushed in scarlet. One yachty dared spit the real aloud. "She owns the deck now." His tone was low, but domes nodded back up. It was straight facts. Lydia's front split. She wheeled back to the CEO, tone quaking under fury's drag. "You clock who I am?" She spat her bars brittle. "You clock what kin I hail from?" The CEO hiked her lock, no rush. "For the first go?" she piped again. Her clip was chill, crisp, carving the breeze like a edge. "I don't gotta clock who you are. What counts is who you'll clock after tonight." The line dropped heavy, crossed the yacht deck. Yachties wheezed sharp, some gasping, others nodding like they'd waited her to drop. The bars were scaled, not cranked. Yet they rang louder than Lydia's howls. Lydia staggered a step back, gripping her flute tighter, but her peepers spilled the scare she couldn't stash. She tried laughing it off, to whirl again, but her plays lacked the strut of before. The gig was done, and she knew it. Meantime, the CEO's quiet hit back, heavier than prior. She'd handed him just one bar, yet it was plenty to split the bash into prey and post. Round the deck, yachties mumbled wild, their tones weaving fresh yarn, not of trash, but of payback. The fizz on her hide gleamed like blaze light. The deck bowed on instinct to her vibe. And as she parked there still as rock, Lydia clocked something she'd never bought real. Her cackle had lost its pull. The scarlet-clad Lydia parked iced, her chest heaving too zippy, her sneer yanked thin, cross-quaking chops. Round her, the bash quit vibing fest. It was a court, and every peeper had wheeled not to her, but to the dame she'd tried to sink in fizz. The black CEO eased back a hair in her lounge, not slumped, not beat, eased, like a boss comfy on her perch. The fizz blots, once built for shade, stuck to her blouse like badges of pushback. Each leak hitting the teak below rang louder than the faked howls of ticks back. Phone still hiked, but no more for jabs. Yachties mumbled, filming low-key, their lenses boxing the CEO not as chum, but as steamroller, etching the exact tick the power flip locked in. One dude breathed to his lady, "We're clocking legend." She chin-dipped, slow. Peepers never leaving the soaked dame in coral. Lydia tried again, grasping. "Y'all know my kin. Y'all know my bro. We stacked this." Her tone split. Too raw, too zippy. She can't wipe us. But the deck had slid on. A clump of VCs huddled tight, their low tones carrying "Cross the Quiet." 3.2 billion ghosted in a line. Another wagged his dome, awe carved in his lines. She didn't even crank her tone. The drag of those bars settled thick. Some yachties peeped Lydia with side-eye, others with scorn, but none with the shine she chased. The CEO hiked her flute again. Slow, plotted, she pulled another sip. The play was no rush, a low-key rebellion that owned not just her poise, but the deck full. The move was plain, yet it drowned every beef, every nervy snort. And then she parked the flute with a soft clack against the armrest. That noise packed more pull than Lydia's hollering. At last, the CEO piped, her clip chill, solid, the sort of tone that carried farther than any raw. This deck hails stacks, juice, line, but those ain't passed in a flute of fizz. They're stacked, copped, guarded. Her bars slid through the posse like current. Domes tilted front, tuning, soaking. Phones filmed with fresh rush. Lydia stiffened, her mug flushing scarlet against the strung light's glow. The CEO rolled on, never cranking volume, yet each bar landing harder than the last. Tonight you tried to trash me, but what y'all pulled is a reminder to everybody here that juice ain't about show, it's about fallout. A quiet, thicker than teak dropped. Yachties parked still, waiting, scoping, no miss on a single wheeze of what chased. Lydia clutched her bare flute like a buckler, knuckles bleached, peepers darting wild round the deck, hunting anybody to yank her from the quiet that had flipped on her. But zilch stirred. All they clocked now was the dame parked in coral, soaked but rock steady, her chill vibe making the deck feel like it had bent to her say. And in that quiet, it rang clear. Lydia wasn't steering no more. She was parked in the scrap of her own strut. While the black CEO parked in the no-shake core of juice, the breeze on the yacht deck felt juiced, like bolt hit. But the rumble hadn't rolled yet. Yachties parked stiff, wheezes shallow, their locks pinned to the dame in coral who'd flipped trash to take over. Lydia's scarlet gown gleamed under the strung lights, but its shine quit bossing the deck. It stuck to her like grasp, the threads of someone who'd lost reins. She tried once more, tone quaking as she forced the bars out. This is Cap. You can't just ghost links. They don't rap like that. You figure you can strut in here and unstack everything my kin built. The CEO's peepers hiked slow, her lock pinning Lydia with such chill end that the younger dame hitched mid-bar. The posse bent in, holding group wheeze. Juice, the CEO piped soft. Don't beg leave. It wasn't barked, it wasn't showy, but it landed with drag that squashed every mumble in the deck. The yachties iced, their screens glowing faint in their mitts, nabbing a bar that'd ring long post-bash. Lydia's chops parted, but zilch dropped. For the first snap, she looked pint-sized, her flute quaking, her cackle ghosted, her strut coming loose. From the stern end of the lounge, an old salt in crisp threads breathed under his wheeze. She's cooked. Another bent nearer, piping, Nah, they're cooked. All of 'em. The mumbles swelled fresh, but this go they packed diff-tone. Not jabs, not shade, chill, props, stun. The wave had flipped full, and every soul on deck knew it. The CEO tweaked her stance, fizz still leaking faint from her blouse, and parked her chin light against her palm. She didn't gotta pipe more. Her quiet was now the call, her chill the ruling. Lydia stumbled a step back, her heels snagging teak. She scoped frantic for backup for the crew who'd howled with her, for the rides who'd slapped at her mean. But their peepers dodged hers. They were busy scoping the dame she'd tried to shade. The dame who'd flipped and clocked untouchable. Even the trio, iced in the corner, seemed braced on the CEO's no-spit say to strum. The whole deck had realigned round her vibe. Lydia at last slammed her flute on a side rail, the crystal splitting with the slam. "This ain't wrapped," she hissed, though her tone shook too hard to sell. She wheeled off, her scarlet gown swirling like blaze out of air, and stormed to the gangway. But her bounce wasn't W, It was bug out. The CEO didn't rise. She didn't gotta. She just scoped, peepers solid, till the hatch shut after the dame in scarlet. The quiet that chased was thick, full stop. And then slow the mumbles kicked again. Not 'bout dirt, but 'bout line, 'bout juice, 'bout the billion slid with one line, 'bout the dame who'd took trash, yet bounced as the lone tag that stuck. In that tick, the deck itself seemed to dip not to stacks passed down, but to grit copped. The hatch thunked shut, hollow, and the ring hung like the tail hum of a dirge. Lydia was ghost, but the drag of her strut still floated the breeze, now peeled raw for all to peep. What kicked as show-wrapped as quiet, quiet that belonged full to the dame still parked at the deck's core. The black CEO hiked her flute, one last pull. The strung light's glow danced cross its lip, and for a heartbeat the posse clocked not the blots on her blouse, not the fizz leaking faint to the teak, but the poise of a boss who'd flipped shade to shut down. She pulled a slow sip, parked the flute with plotted poise, and scoped round the deck. One by one, peepers dropped for hers. Phones dipped, mumbles died. Nobody dared cackle now. Nobody dared shade. The yachties who'd jumped the mean sat stiff, shame pooling in their quiet. Others, those who'd scoped with itches, now bent front with props they couldn't mask. She piped, her clip solid, low, carrying easy through the deck. Poise don't ghost when fizz dumps. It don't crack under howls. Poise holds. And tonight, every soul on this deck learned who packs it true. The bars settled like rock. No move, no doubt. A mumble spread this go. Not jabs, not freak, but cop. VCs swapped peaks loaded with math. A dame at the stern breathed to her ride. She owns the deck. She owns tomorrow. The clapback hit as a chin dip, grim and locked, and she owns the link that's now ghost. The CEO rose at last. The play was slow, no rush, yet it rippled the deck like rumble. The blots on her blouse gleamed in the light, but they quit looking like shame. They looked like receipt that even swimming in mean, she stood off limits. Seats scraped as some yachties popped up on instinct with her. Unsure if props or chill moved 'em, the trio, still zipped, dropped their picks full, sensing the bash had passed music. She wheeled to the gangway. Her steps scaled, each one ringing in the quiet. Nobody blocked her lane. Nobody dared. As she passed, the sea of yachties shifted, splitting like crew for their chief. Just shy of the hatch, she paused. She peeped back once, not at the blank spot where Lydia had parked, not at the busted crystal left, but at the posse full. Her lock swept 'em, chill and locked. "Juice don't drop from show," she said. "It drops from what chases." And with that, she stepped through the hatch, leaving a deck soaked not in howls, but in stun. The yachties parked iced in her slipstream. The mumbles hit later on the wire floor, in war rooms, in tags. But for now, the quiet spat it all. She'd rolled in the eve as a guest. She bounced it as the lone tag that stuck.